11.3, studying solutions of quadratic equations. So in order to determine the number of solutions and their nature, we need to basically calculate the discriminant. Remember, the discriminant was b squared minus 4ac. That was the expression that was inside the square root. So in order to find a, b, and c, same rules apply. Completely simplified equation, all terms on one side, 0 on the other. So in this case, we know what a, b, and c are. A is 1, b is -3, and c is 8. So we'll go ahead and substitute that in to b squared minus 4ac. So that would be -3 squared. Make sure you put parentheses because the entire -3 has to be squared. Minus 4 times 1 times 8. So that's 9 minus 32, which is -41. So based on what the discriminant is, we'll know the number of solutions, and we will know their nature. So because this is not 0, that implies that the term that was the square root term actually exists, meaning it does get added and it does get subtracted. So we have two solutions. So we have two solutions. And now the discriminant is negative, which means we're taking the square root of a negative. So that means that they will be imaginary numbers. Two solutions, imaginary. Okay, here it's already simplified. So we see that a equals 4, b equals -12, c equals 9. So let's go ahead and apply it here. Okay, use a different color to differentiate. So that will give us -12 squared minus 4 times 4 times 9, 144 minus, that is also 144. We get 0. So because the discriminant is 0, that means that's what we take the square root of. The square root of 0 is 0. So nothing is being added and subtracted. So we have one solution. And the solution will simply be from our quadratic -b over 2a, which means that it's a rational solution. Okay, let's go ahead and write the quadratic equation that has these given solutions. So regardless whether we have just simple whole numbers or rational numbers, or if we have irrational numbers that you had radicals with, or something like this where we have complex numbers, you always start with setting each one of the solutions equal to x, okay? Because remember, those are solutions. So we always say our variable, we're solving for our variable. So in this case, we have to say, okay, x equals -2, x equals 1/3. Now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and isolate everything to one side, 0 on the other. So in this case, if I add 2 to both sides, I get x minus 2 equals 0, x plus 2, and x minus 1/3 equals 0. Now these two basically end up becoming the factors, the binomial factors that need to be multiplied in order for us to have our quadratic equation. So now we have x plus 2 times x minus 1/3 equals 0. Now it's a matter of foiling. So let's FOIL this out. X squared minus 1/3 x plus 2x minus 2/3 equals 0. We usually don't deal with quadratic equations a lot, at least till now, that have fractions in them, right? So why don't we turn this into an equivalent equation and just eliminate the fraction? How do you eliminate a fraction in an equation? You go ahead and multiply both sides of your equation by a common denominator. So in this case would be 3. So I'll go ahead and multiply this entire side by 3 and this side by 3. Just remember to distribute. So that gives us 3x squared minus x, right? 3 times x squared, 3 times negative 1/3 of 3's cancel out. 3 times 2x is plus 6x. And then 3 times negative 2 over 3 is simply negative 2 equals 0 times 3 is 0. This is so much easier to see. So we have 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Very important that you put equals 0. And then look at this. If I get rid of that equals 0, that's not an equation anymore. That is an expression. But I asked you to find an equation, so don't forget that part. Very important. Okay, let's do this one. Same thing. A lot of students get thrown off at the fact that this is a binomial. That does not matter. We still need to set each one of these equal to 0. So we'll do x equals 2 minus 7i, x equals 2 plus 7i. If we bring everything over to one side, that gives us x equals negative 2 plus, or I'm sorry, yes, negative 2 plus 7i, x equals negative 2 minus 7i. Once again, these two, I'm sorry, not sure, forget I just said all of that. I'm supposed to set it equal to x, which I did, and then bring everything over to one side. So let's do it that again, I'm so sorry. So x equals 2 minus 7i, x equals 2 plus 7i. Now let's isolate everything to one side. So that will be x minus 2 plus 7i equals 0. There we go. Sorry about that. And x minus 2 minus 7i equals 0. We have to isolate everything to one side, 0 on the other. So now these two terms become the factors that need to be multiplied together. X minus 2 plus 7i times x minus 2 minus 7i equals 0. Now we can go ahead and solve this just by going across and distributing, which you distribute this x to all three terms, and then the negative 2 to all three terms, and then the 7i to all three terms. Or if you look a little bit closer, if you can see it, I'm going to put parentheses around here. And look at this now. What do we see? We actually have a set of conjugates. The first term in each factor is x minus 2, x minus 2. The second term, 7i, 7i. Notice the only difference is that the middle sign, one is positive, one is negative. That leads us to multiplying conjugates. If you remember, I'm just going to go to the bottom page real quick and remind you how we multiply conjugates. Conjugates were basically a plus b times a minus b, right? X minus 2 is our a, and 7i is our b, and then 1's plus minus is 1's plus 1 is minus. This simply gives us a squared minus b squared, if you work that out. So that makes life easier here, because then we see it'll simply be the term x minus 2 squared minus the term 7i squared equals 0. Now we can work this out. X minus 2, that quantity squared, is x squared minus 4x plus 4 minus 7i squared will be 49i squared equals 0. Well, what do we know about I squared? I squared is equal to 1. So that means that this I squared, the negative 49, is simply being multiplied by negative 1. So that gives us x squared minus 4x plus 4. Negative 49 times negative 1 is positive 49 equals 0. So that gives us x squared minus 4x. 4 plus 49 is plus 53 equals 0. And that would be our quadratic equation.